Alright, hey everyone, June 30th today, and you know how a couple videos ago I said I was done with the weapon system, I was moving on to other systems? Well,
I lied.
to be fair, I'm not directly touching the weapon system itself. I guess this is considered weapons adjacent. So last video I talked about making this little cheat manager here, where I can add in my own custom functions and make the development process more efficient for me. One of the big things I wanted to add was the ability to give myself a weapon. Before I can even get to that, I had to fix the problem of having the weapons exist in the game, because prior to this, the only weapons that actually spawned within the game were the weapons set in my inventory here. These were the only weapons that would spawn. No other weapons would spawn at all, which means I couldn't give myself any other weapons. Of course, what I could have done was when I triggered that give weapon function, I would spawn a weapon there, then give it to myself. But that really isn't a good solution because there's only ever going to be one copy of every weapon within the game's life cycle. So that's the problem I had to face. How do I spawn each of the weapons into my game that makes sense and is effective to any future systems? I needed to have some sort of isolated box that controls the ownership of each of the weapons and not have it attached to any of the other systems, but this independent box is able to communicate with other systems if it needs to, such as the upgrade manager. I could have created another manager actor class, but I know I'm already going to be moving away from that, so what I did instead was make a subsystem out of this. Looked into the documentation as well for subsystems, seeing what's available, and game instance subsystem is pretty much what I'm looking for. I mean, just look at the reasons to use subsystems. It makes a lot of sense for me. As well as the fact that I didn't need this manager to physically exist in the world. It can just be invisible and still work perfectly fine. I don't need a lot of the overhead that an actor gives compared to a subsystem. I mean, the lifespan is perfect to what I'm looking for, the accessibility is perfect, modularity is nice. The no replication would be an issue if this is a multiplayer game, but since it's single player, the replication doesn't really matter. And plus there's going to only ever be one instance of this manager, so having that singleton aspect works out really well. So with that thought process, to choose a subsystem over an actor, here's the class. Pretty straightforward, just contains a map of all of the weapons that are currently spawned within the game. It has a reference to the data asset containing all information about the weapons within the editor. There's the initialize and deinitialize, and then the basic functions for getting this to work. Being able to get the subsystem, actually spawning into weapons, and getting a weapon from the registry. The code itself, again, nothing too crazy to write home about. In the construction, we're just setting that file path for the data asset within the editor. Initializing, not doing anything. Deinitialize, we're actually destroying the weapons and clearing out that weapon instance map. Retrieving the subsystem, again, super straightforward. Here we go, spawning the weapons. So we're loading that data asset from the editor, iterating through all of the weapon classes, spawning them into the world just at 0, 0, and adding it to the weapon instances if everything's okay. And then get weapon, we're just querying the map based on the name we give it and returning it. And I'll just jump into the game very quickly just to show you that the weapons are actually being spawned before I show you how it works within the cheat manager and the player. 0, 0, just right under here, and you can see there's all the weapons. They're all combined within one another, but here they are. So here we are within the cheat manager. So we do our normal checks, just getting the player controller and the player. We get the weapon registry. You retrieve the weapon from that get weapon function and the weapon name that we're giving within the arguments, as well as an inventory index we want to assign the weapon to. And then what we'll do, we'll add the weapon to the player's inventory and then cheat equip the weapon, which basically we're just force equipping the weapon. Jumping into the player, nothing too crazy. Again, just null check, assigning it to the index and attaching it to the bone and setting the owner. And the cheat equip, this is basically just a condensed version of the weapon swap function I have. I'll show it now. Just a couple of quick checks, making sure that the index is valid as well as the weapon at the index isn't null. Then we're hiding the current weapon, setting the new weapon, setting the animation blueprint of the current weapon that was just set, showing everything, making sure the HUD's all right, making sure we're not firing. Just a super condensed version of that logic where I'm holstering the weapon, swapping the weapon, and equipping the weapon. Here it is in games. We have the starting pistol, FNX 45. Let's go ahead and give myself a weapon now. Let's do the AK. So now slot 2 we have the AK. Everything works fine. Swap back to the first weapon, second weapon. Now let's give myself Super Soaker. Boom. Here we are. And then I can also overwrite the other weapon, so let's say give weapon 0 FNX, let's replace it with the APC 9. here we are. That's perfect. And then just for good measure, a weapon that was already removed, let's go ahead and assign that again. Let's remove the AK, the FNX 45, and here we have it again. So that's super neat. So this is one of those problems I totally forgot to solve when I was working through the weapon system. Completely forgot that I needed to actually spawn in the weapons, or have some way of spawning in the weapons and some way of controlling who owns the weapons throughout this game. So a bit of a random problem, but I'm glad I got it solved. This is actually the last feature I was behind on, so now I'm completely up to date with the videos. So now the next video you'll be seeing, hopefully soon-ish, will be the latest piece I'm working on throughout this game, and it'll continue like that. Hopefully I won't fall behind in either development, editing, recording, none of that. So yeah, that's about all for today. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.